Why photography gear is important, but not that important. Hi, and welcome to episode 99 of the Photography Explained podcast. I'm your host, Rick, and in each episode, I will try to explain one photographic thing to you in plain English in less than 10 minutes-ish, without the irrelevant details. What I tell you is based on my lifetime of photographic experience and not Google. Before I go on, if you have a question you would like me to answer, just go to photographyexplainedpodcast.com/start. Okay then, here is the answery bit. Photography gear is, of course, important, as you need it to take photos. What is more important though is how you use the gear and what you point it at. Composition and great image capture are more important than the gear that you use. Let's not forget, you can take great photos with a rubbish camera, and you can take rubbish photos with a great camera. Okay, that's you told. So, this is one of my things and something that you need to understand. And trust me here, which I hope that you do, this is based on my own experiences, and I'll tell you a little story in a little while. So, what am I going on about? Well, for me, there's far too much time spent talking about gear and not enough time spent talking about taking photos. I mean, what is photography after all? Well, photography is writing or drawing with light. What is photography not? Photography is not all about gear. Photography is not about lusting after gear. Photography is not reading endless gear reviews. Photography is not about shiny newness syndrome. Photography is not about spending all your time looking at gear. Photography is about writing or drawing with light. It's about creating stuff. Now, I say writing or drawing as it depends how correct you want me to be. I mean, you can use either. It doesn't bother me really. What bothers me is this, as I'll slight repeat here, photography for me is not about gear. Photography is about taking photos. It is about creating new things, and once we've created them, sharing them with the world in whatever way we choose. Okay, so that's photography to me. Quick word on gear though. I mean, of course, gear is important, and I'm not saying for a second it's not important. Get the gear that you need and learn how to use it. Sure, this is important. We photographers need gear. It's the tools of our trade, of course we do. So what am I going on about? Well, me. This is all about me, really. So I'll tell you the story of what I did as I just moved my head slightly so it's actually next to the microphone. Well, what did I do? So I bought a camera. I learned how to use it, and I got pretty good with it, if I do say so myself. I used it a lot, and I got some decent photos. In my script, I wrote great photos, which I've downgraded when I'm speaking about it to you to decent photos. How modest of me. And then I started to take my photography more seriously. Now, this was a few years ago, by the way. So I upgraded my camera and I bought a couple more lenses. And I didn't really learn how to use this camera. I just went out and used it. And then I bought some more gear. Is this ringing any bells with anybody? And I ended up looking at gear, trying to find the next big thing, the latest shiny new must-have whatever. And then I bought a bigger bag, a much bigger bag. Well, I needed a bigger bag because I had more gear and I had to take all my gear with me, didn't I? And then I went on a climbing holiday with two mates. I took all my camera gear. And I mean all my camera gear. It was packed into a large plastic crate, and I mean a large plastic crate, and it filled half the boot of my car. And that was a Ford Mondeo, by the way, which had a big boot. Oh, that reminds me, I love that car. Ford Mondeo, it was ace. I ran it into the ground. Bless it. So then we packed all our climbing gear around the large plastic crate, and do you know what? I did not have enough room for all my climbing gear. Now that should have been my first warning. That should have told me something. I'm going on a climbing trip and I'm taking all my camera gear and not all my climbing gear. Anyway, the trip was great and I took some decent photos and I used some of the gear, which was a bonus. And when I got home, I found more stuff to buy. I bought an even larger backpack so I could carry everything. This was a big backpack. This was heavy, and yes, I really did this. And I also had cupboards full of lovely, shiny, expensive gear. It was all over the place. But do you know what wasn't happening? Well, my photography was going nowhere. The gear was actually a hindrance. It was a distraction. It was a diversion. It was heavy too. So my photography wasn't improving, just the amount of gear was increasing. And I stayed that way for some years, I can tell you. Longer than I care to admit to, if I'm being honest. Well, not being that honest, because I'm not admitting to it, am I? But it was a good few years. I continued doing this. It's like, oh, there's a new thing come out. I'm going to buy that. Who knows what I was thinking. But that was then. So what about now? I'm a reformed character. On a commercial... I wish. On on a commercial shoot, this is what I do. I pack my Canon. I'm not that bad. There's no undercurrent to that. There's no secret backstory that I need to be ashamed of, by the way. I just found what I said amusing, and I hope you did. So on a commercial shoot, this is what I do. I pack my bag with my Canon 6D. Oh, I failed there, haven't I? I pack my Canon 6D, Canon 17 to 40mm lens, and a small number of accessories into my Peak Design everyday backpack. And that's the small 20-litre one. I have a larger bag with all the spares I'd ever need, which stays in my car. But it's not that large, and that's it. There is no more. And do you know what? 95% of my shoots, I use the gear in the backpack only. That's one camera, one lens, one tripod, and a loop viewer. Obviously use batteries and memory cards and everything, and cleaning gear, but that's all I use. Seriously. And for a holiday, I swap the Canon gear for my smaller Olympus gear. I take one camera body, 2 lenses, and essential accessories only. Now these actually fit in the bottom half of my camera bag. Yes, the same small Peak Design one. Oh, okay, then my tripod goes in a suitcase, but don't tell Mrs. M that, please, because she might realise why one suitcase is heavier than the others. And that's what I do. This isn't a thing, by the way. This is very much not a thing. It's not me being I hardly use any gear photographer. I'm not trying to make a name for myself with this. Not at all. It's not a premeditated thing. It's just, this is my reality, and this is what works for me. And it took me a worryingly long time to figure this out. See, it's not about having all the gear. It's about getting out more and taking photos with the gear that you have. So don't think you have to have all the gear under the sun to be a real photographer. There's so many places where we're led to believe that, and that's the point here. You need the gear that you need for sure, but stop there. Okay, then, so what do I do? Well, I've sort of told you, haven't I? I used to be obsessed with gear and spend more time looking at gear than I did taking photos. Nowadays, I have what I have, and I'm happy. The only time that I think about gear these days is when I'm writing stuff like this. And that's completely true. I don't browse online looking for this, that, or the other. I really don't. It's something I've almost forgotten about because I'm happy with what I've got and it does what I need it to do. Right, the talky bit, as if that wasn't talky enough. So this is my lesson in photography that I'm sharing with you. This is what I did. I bought gear that I've actually never used. I shouldn't be admitting to some of this, really. I bought gear because I thought I needed it. I bought gear because I thought I'd take better photos with it. And I haven't written this down, but I am going to say this. I bought gear because I've read things where people have told me that I needed it. And I felt, I don't know if insecure is the right word, but I read people saying, reputable people saying, you need one of these to be a proper photographer and take proper photos. And I've done that, and they were wrong, and I didn't. So if you're in the same position that I've been in at any point in this journey, then please just stop and think. It's all you need to do, and don't buy anything else. Yeah, I bought lenses I really didn't need. Now, they're not cheap either. Now, I was very fortunate at the time. I could afford all this stuff, but I must have wasted a lot of money. And I must have wasted a lot of time looking at stuff that I really did not need. And like I say, these days, I will only buy new gear if it will, 1, help me take better photos. 2, help me to get the photos that I cannot get with the gear that I have. Or to replace something that's gone to the great camera gear place in the sky. Let me repeat that. These days, I will only buy new gear if it will help me take better photos. See, I'm not against gear, by any stretch. If something will help me take better photos, I'm interested. Help me get photos I cannot get with the gear that I have. Again, that is another perfectly legitimate reason to buy gear. Or to replace something that's gone to the great camera gear place in the sky. Something that's broken. When camera gear fails for me, it tends to be because I've broken it. Things don't just fail on their own, do they? Not if they're with me, they don't. I get to them first. Other than these things, I genuinely do not think about gear unless I'm writing about it. And if you check out my blog at rickmcavoyphotography.com or other episodes of my podcast, you'll find I've been saying this for a number of years now. This isn't a new thing. This isn't me trying to get some headline or anything. This is my genuine belief, and I've been acting on this for a long time. I mean, I still use a Canon 6D, and I'm not apologising for that. It's still a great camera. I don't need a new camera now. And this realisation of not needing the gear, it was actually liberating for me. It was such a positive thing. So one last thing on this is it's the 1 year rule. This is my rule. I'd like to say I came up with it. but I can't because I'm sure somebody else somewhere did before me. This can't be my original thought. Anyway, this is my 1 year rule. So what happened was I put some gear in a plastic box and I stored it in the garage. 1 year later, I sold it all. I'd not thought about it or needed it for 12 months, so it all went, and I got some money back. And you know what? I've not missed anything. I cannot think of a time when I wished I'd kept something. I'm happily fine as I am with what I have. And that's the thing, I've never looked back from selling this gear and thought, oh, I wish I still had that. Never. I mean, I used some of the gear quite a lot and enjoyed it, but that's just me. Now, I need to qualify all this with one statement. If you love looking at gear, that's fine. If you love buying new gear, playing with new gear, if photography to you is all about the gear, then that's fine. That's your thing. But if you think that you need the gear and you're not sure, and you're wondering why you're not progressing and why you're not getting better because you're spending all your time on gear, then just take note of what I said. Okay? Gear's fine. If you love gear, absolutely fine. That's your right and privilege, so crack on with it. Okay then, that's me and gear done. Related episodes. Episode 1, what is photography to me? Yeah, this is where it all started, this podcast, and I would say, hey, let's go back and listen to that episode, but I'm not going to be honest with you, because I dread to think what I sound like 199 episodes ago. So, no, let's look forwards instead. Next episode. Talking of which, see, this isn't just thrown together. There is some thought behind some of this. Photography Explained Podcast, episode 100. Yes, episode 100. I've nearly made it there. Not yet, I know. Blimey, 100 episodes of my podcast. So, is it going to be a celebratory episode? Will there be fanfares? Cannons? No pun intended. Special guests, 100 photography things explained in less than 10 minutes, the highlights of the first 99 episodes of my podcast, and boy, have there been some. No, there won't. It will be episode 100, where in a typically British way, I will modestly brush over this achievement and talk about the next subject, which is, why are there so many camera settings? I'm confused. Help me. Which takes me straight into a new series of episodes, which I'm very excited about. Okay, shout out to me and my new course. Find out more at rickmcavoyphotography.com/courses. Well, if I can't promote myself here, where can I? And I've always wanted to do a voiceover for an ad, just didn't know it'd be on my own podcast. Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much for listening to my small but perfectly formed podcast. To find out more about my podcast and do stuff to help me, check out photographyexplainedpodcast.com/start. This episode was brought to you by a cup of tea, which I got halfway through and is now cold. I've been Rick McAvoy. Thanks again for watching. You're not watching, are you? You're listening. I've ruined it right at the end. I've been Rick McAvoy. Thanks again very much for listening to me and for giving me just over 15 minutes of your valuable time. And I will see you on the next episode. Cheers from me, Rick.